My colleague Vusi Khumalo is in Richmond at the event and we cross to him for more. Vusi, good afternoon. I suppose the issue of female-owned businesses and getting support from government is one that did resonate a lot with women, because women are also looking for financial and economic freedom. What is the mood there, and what else has the President said?
Yes, good afternoon, Diego. Yes, indeed, those are the matters that were top of the agenda as the National Women's Day was being commemorated in Richmond, here on the northern, or in the Midlands of the province of Kwazulu Natal, just outside Pietermaritzburg. So one other thing that the President also talked about was that early this year they've passed laws that will strengthen the fight against the gender-based violence. As we know that this event come in the backdrop of the heightened number of spate of violence directed to women and children, with a number of them being killed, with the recent incident of Krugerstop, where women who were shooting a music video were then attacked and then were then allegedly raped at that incident. So those were kind of situation that we found ourselves in, especially here in KwaZulu Natal, because we also have another problem of GBV, and also the GBV has also been considered as another global pandemic that is visiting the province of KwaZulu Natal. But with me are some of the people who have attended this commemoration of the Women's Day. Let me talk to some of them. Speaking to Mama Umama Mpume Shelembe, sikwamukele mama. Just kafushane nje ukuthi yini mhlawumbe uyithathile kwene edonsa amehlo akho ngesikhathi umengameli ekhuluma la ebhekise kunika kakhulukazi njoba nigubha nibungaza usuku labantu besifazane.
Usuku la namhlanje ngizwe ngithokoze kakhulu mesibona upresident kumnandi kakhulu sihlangene, ngathi njalo singasihlezi sihlangana naye kube mnandi kanje. Sabantu besifazane siyajabula kakhulu. Usuku lwethu namhlanje lumnandi kakhulu, olusuku namhlanje luhle nje kakhulu. Siyajabula kakhulu, sithokozile. Yini
mama oyithathile kumengameli ozoyibhekisa phambili uzosho ukuthi mhlambe le ngizokwazi ukuthi isombululo sokuxazulula inkinga enibhekene nazo inkinga noma izinselelo enibhekene nazo njengabantu besifazane ziyini njengoba njengabantu abahlala lapha emakhaya Richmond?
Ziningi izinselelo esihlangabezana nazo, njengoba siyazama siyalima, sifuna ukusizwa ekulimeni, siyalima amasimu, sitshala izipinashi, amakabishi, nakonke ziningi futhi nezigebengu ezihluphayo. Siyahlupha lemgaqweni, sifuna okuningi asize umongameli kakhulu.
Siyabonga kakhulu mama.
Yeah.
Mama Shelembe, briefly, she's saying that she's involved in agriculture. She's got a lot of gardens, and also she's concerned about the high crime rate in this area of Richmond. Let me bring on my colleague now, my colleague Lee Pauls, who's going to tell us about some of the moments, some of the takeaways from the speech of the president. He spoke a lot, especially about GBV matters. What is it that you have taken away from the president's speech?
Well, Vusi, for me as a woman, and I think for many that watch back at home, the harshest sentences on perpetrators now, that the police don't need a warrant when they go to arrest someone that's in their home. That for me is bulking up. Also spoke about police and the policing. He also spoke about, the opportunities that he wants for women empowerment, agriculture, farming. So there's a lot that we can unpack in the president's speech. But for me, the one thing that stood out and the one pertinent issue that stood out was tackling gender-based violence. What implementations are going to be done, Busi? What implementations are going to be done and that are going to actually help, combat the scourge of violence in the country? And I think that many back at home were wanting him to talk about this. He did, and now he's saying that there will be harsher sentences. How that's going to happen and when that's going to be passed by law, it remains to be seen. But it's very exciting for us to hear that they are hitting the ground. ground running and that they're going to combat. But he also didn't mince his words, Vusi, when he said that gender-based violence is a man's problem. It is not a woman's problem. He's also urged the men to stand up, communities to stand up when they see these atrocities happening in the communities, when they know of someone back at home that's being abused, that is being abused by their loved one, a husband, even by a woman, to stand up and to speak out and not be involved with this or not be complicit to the atrocities that are happening, to the violence that is being perpetuated in our community. So that's really one thing that stood out for me, and I think that as government, to see how this plays out in the near future is going to be very interesting, especially with our judiciary. What's going to be happening? Tighter bail sentences, how is that going to come out to play? But I suppose once it's passed, we will see.
And also making an admission that despite making strides in the advancement of women's rights, but they still lag behind in terms of representation in government, and also saying that in government, judges and also magistrates, as well as members of parliament, they've not made their threshold of 50%. They are still below that.
Very, very true. And he touched on that as well. And he says that they're going to be tightening that and strengthening the position of women. You know, when I spoke to the Premier-elect, Nomusa Dube-Ncube, earlier on, she said that one of the first things that she's going to do once she is sworn in is to also uplift the woman in Kwazulu Natal. It remains to be seen what's going to be happening in the other provinces with regards to businesses, entrepreneurship, government plowing back into enterprises, business-owned enterprises, small SMMEs. But Ramaphosa did speak about how they're going to alleviate the poverty in KZN, alleviate the poverty in very, communities that are downtrodden. He spoke about Richmond as well, the high levels of abuse, alcohol abuse that we're experiencing. And it's not just Richmond, Busi, it's across the country. And these play into one another. Poverty speaks to, gender-based violence. It speaks to and it breeds that culture. So really calling on men to stop GBV, but also calling on women to also rise and stand together, calling on women to also occupy uncomfortable spaces, not to allow their backgrounds, not to allow their religion, their customs, their cultures to become hindrances, to hold them back, but to occupy these spaces, and also calling for those at the helm, at government, to also allow these people, allow these women to occupy spaces. So it's going to be very interesting to see once our Premier-elect is sworn in, is she going to stick to what she said to us today, that there's going to be more representation within her, cabinet here in KwaZulu Natal, but also very interesting to see what President Ramaphosa has going to throughout the day. Gender-based violence, we've been speaking about opportunities in the workplace, we've been speaking about inequality and equality for women, but when we speak about these things, we can't also rely on events to become event-driven. It needs to be implemented. So we're going to see if these are going to be implemented, and it remains to be seen, but I know that we're going to be, holding on and calling for those at the helm to actually implement these. And I suppose, Vusi, it's up to you and I, the reporters on the field, and also those communities to speak out. If there's issues, they need to speak out.
And also the issue of access to economic opportunities for women came out very strongly.
I think that is one of the critical things that we have right now. We don't have enough access to these spaces. Like I told you, business avenues, we are looking at the representation of women occupying roles in corporate. We have made strides. We have come a long way, but there's so much more that we need to do. There's so much more that we need to fulfill. We can't have a benchmark of 50%, Fusi. Really, we can't. It's the 21st century now, and if we're talking about equality, it needs to be 100%. It needs to be you are placed in that position because of your strengths and because of what you can do, what you can give. It should never be a case of you are only placed in that position because you're a face, because we have to have women representation. No, it must be because you are qualified and overqualified to occupy that space.
Thank you, Jade. Well said by our very own colleague, Jade Lee Pauls, saying that enough is enough. The abuse of women must come to an end. as you know, that 1 in 5 women are being abused by their intimate partners, and that daily, on a daily basis, 150 women are being raped in the country, and that's also being underreported because only a fraction of those matters end up in or result in a prison sentence. With that said, it's back to you for now.
Thank you so much, Vusi Khumalo, and my colleague Jetli Polsa.